Welcome, Slayers of Giants, to Tilting at Windmills. Last week I took you to the Catedral de Barcelona, and this week, somewhere that is impressive in a different way. This is the big old dog park at Montjuic, on the foothills of the mountain of Montjuic, and I brought the dogs. And I thought I would share a poem with you and then do a little bit of explanation and then move on, because lots to cover today, but I'm going to try and keep it brief. So, welcome to Tilting at Windmills. This poem is called How Does a Dog? How does a dog interpret I'm going to miss you? Through the veil of new vocabulary and incomprehensible tense. Does it sound like I love you? Or I'm sad? Or you've been bad? Or just I'm giving you attention now and that's enough? And is it really that different from anyone else? Of course, a poem should stand alone and not require any explanation or description in order to be effective, and so if that touched anything for you and me talking about it will diminish that, skip ahead. But for context, if, you know, my life as the poet might add to that. One of the elements of the fact that we are going to be leaving Spain is that when I return to the United States, I will be, going my separate way, and it makes more sense for Chris and Frankie, as two people who will have potentially different work schedules, to have the dogs rather than just me and have, 3 dogs in a 1-bedroom apartment who are isolated for 10 hours a day while I am working. So I'm going to be separated from the dogs, as well as separated from the people. And that parallel I felt like was worth exploring a little bit. Okay, I kid you not, we have been interrupted by a parade of motorcycles. Decided that was the time. Maybe this is the universe saying to me, move on to a different topic. So I will proceed. But maybe this does segue into something else. So I have been thinking about something that happened in the news this week also, which is that the Congress had mandated that the Trump administration turn over the Epstein files and had given them very little wiggle room in terms of what could be withheld. And predictably, they just ignored Congress and released, a few files, and then proceeded after the fact to remove some of them even, which is a demonstration of not only their lack of transparency, but their absolute incompetence. You could make one news story out of dumping, 10,000 pages of files that don't actually provide anything new, and they made 2 news stories out of it by then realizing they revealed some things they didn't want to reveal, and removing even those ones that did mention the president. So, this is cacistocracy, rule by the worst. They are both incompetent and awful. So, not a huge surprise. What has been noteworthy to me is that some of the reaction of some people is, that they are surprised that this administration is not abiding by the law. And, what are we going to do? This is against the law. And I've written about the fact that the law is not going to save the United States because the executive branch is the determiner of enforcement of the law. If you turn over the power to enforce the laws to criminals, you cannot then proceed to be shocked when those laws are enforced selectively to protect the criminals and to get their enemies. That's exactly what they will do. I mean, this was entirely predictable. And that brings me to potentially our connection to the poem itself, which is when I was young. My work, my writing was often criticized for being pedantic. I know some of you are laughing out there because you're going, yeah, it's still preachy. But when I was young, I took that very seriously in terms of a criticism, and at the same time kind of often couldn't escape it. And, you know, it has taken me many years to deal with that in my writing, and also to become a little bit more comfortable with that. So, on the one hand, I have found that I have far fewer answers than I did when I was young. It was easy as a younger person to you know, feel like I had all the answers, right? When I was 16, I knew everything. And when I was in my 20s, I still thought I knew a lot. And now, the more I have learned, the less I am certain of, and that is predictable. That is not a huge surprise to those of us who are a little bit older. But at the same time, I have learned about myself and my own limitations. And if my writing sounds like something that comes from a teacher, it's because I'm a teacher and have been for 20 plus years, for more than half my life. If my writing sounds like something that would come from the child of two preachers, if it's a little preachy, yeah, I'm the child of two preachers. And so that is, you know, I will tend to sermonize. And poetry has become a vehicle to explore things when I don't have answers. I want my poems to be a little airier. And at the same time, often there is a very clear idea that I am trying to explore. And so this last poem has more question marks than periods, and that's not bad. But I think it's worth pondering the criticism, which I don't think I ever really explored thoroughly enough. Where does this criticism come from that writing shouldn't say something, shouldn't be didactic? And is that necessarily helpful to writers, to readers, to the art itself? Or is it possible, should it at least be explored, that maybe that comes from a place of, say, you know, a cultural place of saying, you know, we are uncomfortable with, you know, authority, with, didacticism, with elitism, right? And that, you know, maybe it's okay for writing to say some things and also ask questions, especially if the writer is being transparent about the fact that they have some conclusions that they've come to, and those conclusions may be wrong. And also they have some questions, and those questions are uncomfortable, and maybe that's okay to have questions, right? And so back to the context of the lack of release of the Epstein files, I think that it is hard for people to hold in tension the fact that the law will not save us, which is this point that I've been trying to make over and over and over, and yet there is no clear other answer, right? And part of what I think is happening is that a certain kind of person, cishet white males, on the center, let's say center left, are starting to understand what women, what people of color, what marginalized folks have understood about the United States for centuries, which is that you cannot count on the authorities to help you, to take your side, if the structure is not built for you, if the structure is built for them. And a lot of the anger, I think, that you are hearing from the center left is people saying, wait a second, we could count on the police to protect us. We could count on the military to defend us. We could count on all these things because the system really was set up for us, right? And now that this regime is in power, they're saying, wait a second, the system is not working for us the way it always has. And a whole lot of other folks are saying the system never worked for us. And so there's this disconnect where you've got folks saying, but we counted on this. Me, people like me, cishet white guys of a certain age, right? That if we voted correctly, progress would be inevitable, and slow going and a slog and difficult perhaps, but in the end the system would work for us because we the people would use our voice and we would speak and we would ultimately come to the conclusions that were in the interest of we the people. And that just was never true. Like, that was never accurate. It was a lie that we were brainwashed into believing. The system was always going to be tilted towards a minority of people, and we're just finding out, whoa, this is what it feels like when we're not in that group anymore, right? When this kleptocracy consolidates power to such an extent that now we're realizing, oh, there's very few people that the system serves, and we're not in it. And so in that place, when things are becoming so transparently obvious that, when you think about the Epstein files, just as an example, and I think they are a good example, not because they are the most awful thing. Believe it or not, they are not the most awful thing that this administration has done. They are the most kind of viscerally abhorrent. Like, this is what, people look at and say, oh my gosh, it's indefensible, and because it's indefensible, I can identify that, and I can feel that, and I think MAGA is having a real hard time saying, oh, this is okay, right? Compared to killing millions, not literally millions of people will die because of Doge's cuts to foreign aid. 14 million people, right? When you're talking about millions of people, this goes back to other horrible acts of, historical atrocity, the people become statistics, right? And statistics are hard to feel about. And so starving 14 million people doesn't get the same attention as the horrors that were committed by Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump and all of the other, Bill Clinton and whoever else was involved in that awful act. And so I'm of two minds about, yes, should we be paying more attention to the Epstein files? Yes, because it may be what brings them down. Is it ultimately going to be the worst thing that they have done? No. I mean, this is not as bad as concentration camps, and we're literally at concentration camps now. But if it's the thing that takes them out of power and stops the concentration camps, okay, I want attention to be paid to it. So that is this difficult place that we find ourselves in, and part of that recognition is, Pam Bondi is not going to prosecute Donald Trump, right? That's not the way this is ever going to play out. And people who thought that the justice system, which has not provided justice to the majority of Americans for the majority of U.S. history, was suddenly going to magically produce justice in this case, were naive. And yet, those of us who've been saying, we crossed the Rubicon. We, and I keep going back to this too, because some of the people are saying we didn't vote for him. No, but we also, no kings happened after the election. We weren't out in the streets saying this is totally unacceptable. And so, yeah, were there shenanigans in the election? Yes. Was there sexism and racism that tilted the voting? Absolutely. Was there evidence that should have been taken more seriously? Yes. And it never should have even been that close. And so when you look at all of that, we, all of us, including people who did not vote for Donald Trump, need to take ownership of the fact that we could have done a whole lot more. And we went, the system will work, right? We believed in the system. And that's what I've lost faith in. Like, the system will not save us. And so, in that context, I think people rightly say, okay, author, poet who's writing about this kind of thing, what's your alternative? What's your answer? And that's where somebody like me, who writes pedantic stuff, has to say, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I have ideas. I think we should be working diversity of tactics. We should be trying everything, right? There should be talk of general strikes. There should be talk of all kinds of boycotts. There should be certainly electoral action. Please do vote, use all the tools, and don't believe in any one tool working anymore. Because if you think that taking back Congress is going to suddenly stop this administration, you're being naive. They are the executive branch, the ones that execute the laws. And so they can just say, you and what army? Right, as Jackson said about the Supreme Court, when Jackson authorized the Trail of Tears, despite a Supreme Court ruling that prohibited that action. He just went, okay, but the Supreme Court doesn't have an army. And now we have a situation where the Supreme Court, and I've actually heard attorneys talking about this, the Supreme Court is so nervous about losing any authority that they don't want to make any rulings that the administration will simply disregard, because it would prove that they have no authority. So they're making rulings that are in favor of the administration so that they continue to exist. Because as soon as they cross him, he can just go, yeah, and they have no enforcement power. So the Supreme Court is not strong. The Supreme Court is incredibly weak. And they are just doing what the administration wants them to do so that they can retain this illusion of power. They don't have any power, really, because the power of the executive branch has been given by the American people, a combination of the folks who voted for Donald Trump and the folks who sat on their couches, and, again, let's be honest, the folks who voted against Donald Trump but weren't out in the streets freaking out. Right? We need to own it too, right? We all gave the power to a bunch of criminals who are going to do what they're going to do. And we have to use every means at our disposal to push back. And I don't know not only what we should do, I don't know what, if anything, will work. And so in the same way, I don't have answers in the poems I write. I don't have answers politically. My answer was, we're screwed, and people need to seriously consider getting out, because the options after getting out are worse, right? And now I have to go back. And so I have no answers. No good answers, no satisfactory answers. And that is a place that I have to, exist in. And maybe that's a place that a poet should exist in, right? Not knowing. And that brings me back to the poem. I am terribly uncomfortable with the fact that I'm going to be separated from the dogs that I love very much. And I'm going to be separated from my family, who I love very much. And that's because this life is not working, in so many ways. So I'm starting over with nothing. And nothing includes answers, right? And yeah, I mean, maybe that means I shouldn't be talking to you right now, because I don't have answers. But maybe this is of value to someone out there who's saying it's incredibly frustrating and isolating to feel like the people around me are going about their lives as though their lives make sense. And maybe it's not all bad to know, no, you are being gaslit. This is crazy town, right? This does not make sense. And maybe it never should have made as much sense to us as we thought it did, right? But that's not a consolation now. You are in Crazy Town. And there's not a lot that we can do other than survive. Well, no, I shouldn't even say that. I don't know that. Maybe there's a lot that we could be doing, but we don't know that any one of those things will work. And that's a really hard place to be. So I'm going to continue doing this show. I'm going to change it pretty dramatically. I'm going to start recording a serial novel beginning in mid to late January. I've started drafting that. I'm excited to share that. That's about precisely this disconnect, this place where things don't make sense that we exist in now. And we will experience this together, whether we like it or not. Right? We are going to go through this together. And so if it is of value to you to come back here and commiserate with somebody who is maybe feeling the way you are feeling, I'm glad to have you here. And I will be, very much missing my dogs and my people. So anybody who sticks around, it will be really nice to have you present with me in what comes next. Because what comes next? Question marks. A lot more question marks than periods. But I can't in good conscience leave you on such a dire note, so I do have some things to give to you that I should mention. This is, going out in our December newsletter, and I ought to share something a little more positive than than the trip to the dog park. So, some gifts. We've got our new and improved store, the Not a Pipe store, which is at www.notapipestore.com. And we've got some deals for you right now. If you buy one item, you get 25% off the second item store-wide. That's just for everybody. And if you use the coupon code DecemberWriter at checkout, you get a book and a piece of apparel. Then you get $5 off. So I'm not sure which of those will be the better deal for you. So try both, put in the code, see if it's even cheaper if you get a book and a piece of, a shirt, a sweatshirt, whatever. And while you're there, please check out our newest books. Our current bestseller is Fortunate Son by Melinda Mitchell. It's a retelling of the biblical story of David, but set in a science fiction world with giant mechs and spaceships. Yes, it is as freaking awesome as it sounds. So get your copy of that. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. The second volume of the Antifa Lit Journal came out last month, and this time it includes visual art as well as poetry and short fiction, and it's in full color. It looks so great. It's got colored edges on the pages, and so get your copy of that. It's called Hungry Work. Get your copy of that. I'll have a link in the show notes. Karen Eisenbrey has a new book out, Deep River Rising. It's the second in her Tales from Deep River series, following A Quest for Hidden Things. A Quest for Hidden Things came out in April, and now we have Deep River Rising. This is the series that is kind of low spice coming of age fantasy. If that's a cozy is what you need right now, that is entirely appropriate. And the third book in that series, Promise Stones and Granny's Bones, will be coming out in spring. So get those first two and get ready for that third one. Jess Honard and Marie Parks released the second book in there, The Grigori Cycle. If you haven't read the first, Unrelenting, you'll want to grab that. It's so good and has this amazing twist at the end. And then you will be desperate to get your copy of the second one, Undeniable. So this is a paranormal series set in our world, but there's a conspiracy of magical creatures. It's got deep lore. It's got these fantastic characters, and it has what the authors call ambient queerness. There's an ace protagonist, there are other queer characters, and they just exist without their sexuality being the focus of the story. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, it is excellent. My third book in my trilogy, The Convention of Fiends, came out just in time for Halloween. So if you want to fill your darkest nights of the year with lesbian vampires, baby werewolves, a non-binary golem, and the most lovable reanimated skeleton you'll ever meet, pick up Don't Read This Book, then You Were Warned, and then the third, You People Are Monsters. And you can get 20% off all 3 of those if you go to our store. So I'll put a link to that as well. If you're an author, if you're a poet, if you're a visual artist, Not a Pipe Publishing is currently accepting submissions for Volume 3 of the Antifa Lit Journal. Please use your artistic superpowers to stand up to fascism and envision a world that's better than this. More details about that, I'll put a link in the show notes. And if you are interested in connecting with your fellow anti-fascist writers, on January 3rd, we're hosting our first ever Anti-Fascist Write-athon. We'll meet via Zoom. We'll work on whatever is your current work in progress, so you don't have to do anything specific. You can just be writing time. But we will take breaks together to kind of commiserate. That's valuable time networking and connecting with other authors. And the event is a fundraiser for the Antifa Lit Journal, so you'll be doing well and doing good at the same time. Register to participate for that. I'll post a link in the show notes. And if you are, if you're not an author yourself, you don't want to participate in that, but you want to support the cause, we're certainly taking donations. And if you know an author who's going to be participating, or if you want to encourage an author to participate and then donate in their name, there's a place there where you can put in that you are cheering on the following author. So that's a way to kind of support them and encourage them as well. And so please, by all means, join us on January 3rd. That's going to be a lot of fun and very productive. Those write-athons can really be great for authors. So if you're an author and you're looking for the kind of motivation that comes from a bit of social writing, join us on January 3rd. Again, please stay safe. Watch out for your neighbors right now. Do what you can for them. And I will see you again next week.